Hello again, once more, welcome to the desk. Christmas train project. So, this is where we are now. There is a Vallejo gunship green, it's rattling because there's weights inside it. Fire red, and obviously white on the roof. So, what I need to do is take the loose bits out of the inside, because otherwise they're going to annoy me somewhat. That's sorted, wherever that's just rolled to. Now, I could just run them as this. Yeah, pick a few little bits out maybe. I want to add a bit more depth to it. So what I'm going to do, and I've got all of them to do here, but I'm just going to be doing little bits of this on camera, and then we'll sort of fast forward various other bits. I can stop things falling over. The colour I actually wanted to do this in is a Games Workshop wash called Caribou Crimson. And for the life of me, I can't find it. So what instead I'm going to try is this one, Reichland Flesh Shade. It's a reddish wash, so I'm going to give it a try. And I'm going to start on a bogey because I want to see what this looks like before I put it on everything else. So I can do this on the underneath. So give this a good shake. This comes out. Now these are shades. These are translucent paints. So if I just put a load of that onto the brush and just run it over here, see what that looks like. And hopefully what you can see, let's see if the camera's picking it up, it's darkened all the little recess areas and it's left the rest alone. So actually that's worked quite nicely. So I'm going to do the same on the side. And basically this is cover all of it. The Caribou Crimson would look a little bit better than this because it's redder. But this goes on fairly generous amount. You don't really want to lather it too much, but you want to make sure it goes into all the little recess areas. And this stuff is pretty good. I mean, there's the Games Workshop range of paints. They're not the cheapest, but they are pretty good at this sort of thing. There's other ranges. Vallejo do washes as well. AK do washes. There's loads, and it's which one's best largely comes down to which ones can you get hold of, because the best for you is typically whatever paint you can get hold of easily. You can do this with enamels, although you do have to make your own wash if you're doing it with enamels. Very, very easy to do though, and we're going to have a look at some of that later, because I need a black oil wash and I don't have one. I have some panel lining paints, which is what I want to use, but I don't have a black one because my local hobby place hasn't had a black one in stock for a very long time. So yeah, but there we go. Now the other secret with this stuff is when you've put the wash on, you want to let it dry, and this takes a little while. This will probably take about half an hour to dry, but I've got quite a few of these to do. So obviously I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me doing every little bit of every one of them. But it's darkened the red slightly, which I'm going to deal with, but it's also showing up the detail. So I'm going to do that to all of the red, and then we'll be back. One thing worth mentioning, these paints are acrylic, therefore you wash the brushes out in water. It's worth washing the brushes out fairly regularly because you don't want this stuff drying in them. You can get brush cleaners, brush soaps, but which is not a bad idea to have, but look after your brushes. You can get really cheap disposable quality brushes, but to be honest, I find actually spending a little bit more and getting some more. I mean, these weren't expensive. These are about £3-4 a brush, so they're not too bad. You can spend silly money on brushes. Some of the Winsor & Newton Series 7 are very good, very expensive, very good brushes. You really do, but unless you really know how to look after a brush, they're probably not worth the cost, because you'll destroy it in fairly short order if you don't know how to look after it. And some of those brushes are like 10-15 quid each, if not a bit more. Artis Opus, they do a nice range of brushes, but to be honest, these are Red Kalinske Sable Creative Models. And I got these from a friend of mine who used to run a model shop, which is now sadly closed. But they are rather good brushes, and before he closed, I got quite a few of them. So I do have a bit of a supply. Incidentally, if you see, if you're using a wash and you see you get a bit much on, it starts pooling, just move it with a brush. It moves pretty easily. Go on here. What I'm trying to do here is cover anything that I want eventually to be red. If I'm going to paint over it, I'm not that bothered if I get the red on it. And yes, I'm painting bits on the underneath, but the bits I'm painting are the bits you can see. So I'm not too bothered about doing all this interior detail down here. You'll never see it when the model's finished. So that's that. I'm going to run out of space here. Anyway, I'm going to finish these and then we'll be back. Okay, so that's had some time to dry. It's not fully dry on all of them, but it's dry enough for what I need to do next. If I get another one turned the other way up, you can see the difference, I think, between the bit with the wash and the bit without. With the wash, it's slightly darker. I'm going to be sorting that out. I'm going to get some of the wash stages done first, then later I can come back in and do all the highlighting. That's going to be a lot brighter when I've finished with it. But that's the red. So next up I've got this one. Athonian Camo Shade. Now this is a green wash. GW do a couple of green washes. This one's quite a dull one, but what it's going to do, I hope, is increase the colour saturation slightly. It'll darken the wood panelling and it'll increase the saturation of the green slightly. So let's have a look on the end of this one. So if I grab some paint and just apply that. See, that's gone quite a bit darker. I'm gentle about finding the roof. I can just take the roof off. It's the simplest way of doing it. Hold it by the underframe and then paint this on. And what this is going to do is exactly the same thing in terms of highlighting all of the panel lines, or at least raising attention of all of the panel lines. Paint some of this strapping in different colours later, you'll see. So this goes on and it's doing the shading effect I want, but it's also changing the tone of that base green a little bit. Just to make it a little bit more saturated, a little bit greener, if that makes sense. So that's the end of that. And as you can see, now all of these little shade pieces in around the strapping stand out a bit more. So I'm going to carry on with that on this one. Let's say these washes now, I've got a lot of this stuff because I do tabletop gaming as another hobby, and I find it amusing because people complain about prices in tabletop gaming and say the hobby is far too expensive, and I sort of sit there thinking, try model railways. In fact, better still, try both, because yeah. Anyway, so put this stuff on in the direction of whatever panel linings you've got, but also just make sure you get it into all of the recess bits. There's another way of doing this. You can very carefully just paint this into the recess areas, referred to as a pin wash, and away you go. But, yeah. So yeah, it's worth having a shop around. If you go into one of the Games Workshop places, be aware their sales staff can be very good as salesmen. If they come over and say, what are you looking for, I can tell them. They'll probably be quite interested. You're painting something. You're painting something that's not one of their products, so they may look at you a little bit blankly. But if you want to say, you're looking for a green or a blue, they'll be very good at telling you, well, if you get this blue, this is the colour to paint it first, then you can highlight it with this colour. So like in this case, you could paint, the other way of doing this is you don't use shades. You paint this whole thing in a darker green colour. And they have a dark green. To be honest, I've actually got the green you'd probably use sitting here. This one. Wow, flesh. So what you'd end up with is that colour, which is a highlight colour, and then that colour, which is an extreme highlight colour. You'd end up with a triple like that, and you'd paint everything in that. You would then paint, blotch of that, it's got a little bit too heavy on the bottom. You would paint all the raised details, like all of the planking. You would then go over with the intermediate one, Warboss green on this one. Their colour names are they can be hilarious. They don't necessarily tell you what colour it is. And at least Warboss green at least has a word green in its title. So yeah, you'd paint that, and then you'd go around all of the edges that are exposed with the very light one at the end, and that's their paint system. The alternative is you paint like a mid colour first, then you apply one of these washes, and then you highlight over the top. But that's that. Now I'm very happy with that green. If I bring in an unpainted one, or one that's not had to wash, you can see the difference in the colour. Now this, it's pooling a little bit more than I want it to, so I can just go in with a brush and remove bits of that. So we want all of that on there. We're going to highlight that later anyway. We'll keep the roof out of the way because I'm going to do the roof separately. The ones of these where the roof comes off, I'm going to take the roof off for painting it. There's no point getting that on there. This one, different texture on the end, but this will go in. And this paint, this one's having a more pronounced effect than the flesh shade did. The red I wanted to use would have been similar to this. And what this does though, it just settles around all the raised details, just around the edges. So all the panel lining on the end of this wagon will stand out a lot more at the end of this. Same with all the rivet details and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so if you go into a Games Workshop, tell them what you're trying to do. They will speak a very strange language at you, which is the language of their games. Ignore some of the colours. If you want a blue, they're probably going to suggest one of their ultramarine type colour triad ranges, and yeah. But they know what they're doing. Don't let them sell you brushes. Their brushes are horrendously overpriced for what they are. Don't buy glue there, don't buy other bits and pieces. But for paint, they're pretty good. If that's what you've got. Your best bet is a proper model shop. But in the UK at least, Games Workshop are all over the place. Most big cities have got one. Whereas actual model shops these days, unfortunately, are getting to be a little bit hen's teeth. I mean, my local one is Hobby Workshop in Chapeltown, near Sheffield. They're very good. They have a huge range of paint. So if you want Vallejo, if you want AK, if you want Tamiya, they've got the lot. Army Painter, yeah, they've got the sprays, they've got the paints, they've got the washers. Not affiliated with them in any way, but just a happy customer. That's where I get most of my paints from now, since the shop run by my friend Colin closed a couple of years ago. He took well-earned retirement. So carry on with this onto here, into all the details. Now this one's got flat panels, so you see I could, if we just look at this end over here, you see I could paint this in sort of like that and leave the panel in the centre in the lighter colour. Now I'm not going to, because I want this colour. I'm looking at this to change the green a little bit as well. But you can do that, and that's like a crude panel lining. But it works. And then you've sort of got an instant highlight in the panel in the middle. I'm going to be highlighting the panels in the middle using a dry brushing technique. but I want to get these washes done first. The other thing to note with these washes is they do take a while to dry. I was expecting it to be about half an hour, 45 minutes. It was about an hour and a half before I could get back to this stage of doing this bit next. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to carry on with these, and then I'll be back. Okay, we've had a couple of hours. This stuff's had time to dry, so that's on. Now you can see the green and the red are both a bit blotchy. That's pretty much what happens when you do this. So what we're going to do now is some dry brushing. I'm going to start with the red. So the first colour, and this is not a bad idea, I hope, is the base colour. So here I'm going to use this fire red. Now this is a Model Air paint. I'm using this little ESP32's container as a palette. It's a brush like this, a round tipped one. And this is perhaps one of the more important bits. A small sponge. Now this sponge is damp. It's not soaked, but it's damp. Because what I'm going to do is a bit of paint on the brush. We're going to take most of it off, and I'm going to do that. And that just wets the brush slightly. And the reason for wetting the brush slightly is so I can do this and it will be fairly smooth. So a little bit more of that on there again, damp it slightly. You don't have to use the damping bit, but what you'll find is you get a much smoother effect. It's going to be a little bit hard to see on the red. The purpose of the bit I'm doing at the moment is to get rid of the patchiness. So we just put this on here. And dry brushing, the paint will catch all of the raised areas. Like that. And it just provides a little bit of a highlight. Now here, on the underframe, there's a lot of detail. This technique will come into its own on the green. But it's working, and it's picking up just a little bit. A bit more of that. What this is doing, this is thinning the paint slightly. Now, when you're painting normally, as the Holy Duncan says, thin your paints, 2 thin coats. He knows what he's talking about. This is a professional painter who's been doing painting videos for a long time and has his own YouTube channel. Used to work for Games Workshop. Right, so that's that. Now, if I bring the other one of those self-same wagons in, doesn't make a lot of difference. It's subtle, but it's there. We are going to do another colour. So I'm going to do the rest of these in this red. Then we're going to come back and we're going to look at the next stage. Okay, so I've got those done on all of them. Now, it's still quite dark. So the next up, I'm going to use this. Now, this is a much brighter red. This is Mephiston Red by Games Workshop. And one thing you might notice, I haven't cleaned the brush. Couple of reasons. I want the two colours to blend together a little bit. That's one reason. The main reason is it is an absolute pain to dry these brushes. So I'm going to take a bit of paint out of here, which is a bit of a different colour, red. And then this is going on as a dry brush as well. And this is a little bit brighter. Closer to a sort of blood red colour. I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm going to just wet that a little, and we'll see how it goes. Now I do have an alternative red if this one doesn't look brilliant. And to be honest, I'm not sure it does. Largely because it's not mixed brilliantly. So I'm going to try this one. This is Wazdaka red, whatever. And that's not mixed at all, so I'm not going to be able to use anything with that. So I'm going to find a stick and stir and mix this a bit better. This is one of the problems with some of these GW paints. The pots are horrible. And as such, the paints don't really mix very well in the pots, so that's a little bit brighter red than we had before. That's that. So easiest way of cleaning the stick is use the paintbrush. So we'll do a bit of that. Ah, it's coming out better. That's a nicer red now. And hopefully, if I bring in the other one again, get the light on it. Hopefully you can see the difference. This one's redder, if that makes sense. So we shall do a bit more of this. And really what you're trying to do with this is catch the edges. Now I'm going to be doing a lighter red as well if I can find one. I know the colour I want. The question is whether I can find it. Because I need a much lighter red to go over the top of this. Just as a final highlight. But as a whole, that doesn't look too bad. So, again, I'm going to get the rest of these done and I'll be back. Next up is another red. Now, the third law of sod being what it is, this is the crimson wash I was looking for earlier. I'm trying to find the one I actually used. It's over here. So, if you look, bit of a difference. It's a little bit redder. It's too late now. Anyway, never mind. The one I want now is this Wild Rider red. Now, this is quite an orangey red, which is very good as a highlight. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this. I'm going to be using some of this, which is quite bright. As you can see, this is quite an orangey colour, which is good. So again, same brush, and rub it in, damp it down slightly, rub it over again. And then this, take a little bit more off, you can go onto here, you can see and that, again, if I find the other one, can angle them right and get the colour to show, is a lot lighter. And it looks a lot better. And it's going on. But it's only going on quite lightly. I don't want lots of this. This is to pick out edges. So I'm not really putting any pressure on here at all. And this gives me quite a nice bright red. So again, I'm going to get the rest of these done and I shall then return and we'll have a look at what we're going to do with the green, because it's going to go through a similar process, although obviously using greens, not reds. Okay, that's them done. Now there are certain bits of these models I want to highlight a little bit further, and the way to do it is actually quite straightforward. It is again the Wild Rider red, except now I'm not dry brushing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of the paint onto here, like so. I'm going to add a bit of water to it, just to thin it out a little. Don't need much more than that. I'm going to take the excess off the brush. Stuff like that, don't want too much on there. And now what I'm going to do is just find the bits I actually want just a little bit more of a highlight on, like some of these corner pieces here. I'm just going to paint a bit more, put a little bit more paint on them. And this sort of edge piece along here, do it just a little bit more in a few places. And it's just picking out certain raised details. Don't have to do much. I mean, you could go around and do every single edge on the thing like this. This sort of hard edge highlighting. I wouldn't. It's a pain in the neck as a technique to do. But you might be able to see it's just picks that out a little bit. Where it comes into its own, however, is on the coach, because what I've got to do, well, I don't have to, but I'm going to, is I'm going to do this along the edge of the running board, just to pick that out in a brighter colour. The dry brush highlight has done a lot of the work for me, but this will just make the edge of the footstep stand out a little bit more. And this is, it's one of the techniques we use on gaming figures, just to really to draw attention to things. Now normally you wouldn't necessarily do it on a model railway vehicle, because usually you want everything to blend in nicely. However, this one's a little bit of fun, so I'm using some of these colours just to brighten it up a bit. We'll do the same with the green later. So just run that along the edge. And it means the edge of the footstep, water, just stands out a little bit. Slightly more than it would do just with the normal highlighting, with the dry brush. And just by running the brush along the edge, it doesn't really catch on the top, but you can sort of see it, so if that makes sense. So yeah, let's carry on with this. Very gently along here. I'm going to do it on the guard's van as well, because that's obviously got footboards as well. A bit more water, not much. And I say, this is the technique for anything you really want to pop. I'm going to do something similar later with white for all the handrails, because I want the handrails in white. The door handles will probably be brass, because that looks quite good. But that now stands out. So do the other side, and then that's the red done on the coach. And like I say, I've just got the other little bit to do. This is, if you're going to start painting vehicles, or if you want to do any touching ups, weatherings, anything like that, there's a few little techniques that are worth practicing. Edge highlighting is one for this sort of thing. Dry brushing is definitely another. It's well worth practicing dry brushing. Good way of doing it is to get an old vehicle of some sort, doesn't matter what it is, or an old model, it can be anything really, and paint it black, and then dry brush it white. And what you're after is an effect that is smooth. It's very, very easy to get a scratchy dry brush finish, and if your dry brushing is going scratchy, your paint's too dry. And it's weird because you want the brush to be dry, but you don't want the paint to be dry. So sometimes a little bit of water just to thin it down. And this is, like I say, what this little damping pad is for when dry brushing. So that can go across there like so. And this doesn't have to be completely consistent. I mean, you can always come back and give it another coat if you think it's not quite bright enough. And conversely, if you think, yeah, that's a bit too much, you can come back in with a wash and just tone it down again. As I do this and I glance at the screen, I'm painfully aware I need to get a better camera setup and better lighting setup for doing this sort of thing, just so that it shows a little bit better. But hopefully when I've got the finished article in front of me, you'll be able to see more what I'm talking about. We'll do some of that in better lighting, shall we say. So, go a little bit more there. Nearly done on this, and then we will go over and hit the edge. So it's just a sec. I've just got the other bit to do, which is this one. So again, I'm just going to do the edges of the footstep. And it's really just to make it stand out a bit. I mean, I did think I could paint this footstep in a brown, make it like a wooden colour, but to be honest, I want to keep the colour palette fairly muted on these. So we'll do this. There is going to be brown on this because I'm going to paint the floor and that of the interior. But that is, It's very firmly in the detailing stages later. I'm going to do most of this here. But that just gives that red, the footstep a little bit of a red. I'll do the ends as well, or at least the corners of the ends. I don't necessarily have to do all of it. And it just means it'll just catch the light a little bit more as it runs around. I'm pondering adding a red tail light to this and some interior lighting. I haven't quite got that far yet. I'm just going to do the painting first, because what I want is a workable Christmas train, and then I can wave the excess bits later. So I've got something. I am planning on putting lights in the coach. I'm going to use it as a bit of a prototype for my putting lights in coaches project. So we shall see how that goes as well. But that's that, and that's probably all of that highlighting I need to do. So what I now need to do is find my bit of tissue, clean the brush, I'm going to go clean the water, because I'm going to swap colours and we're going to have a look at doing the green. So I shall be back in a mo. Okay, next step, the green. Now, as before, I'm probably going to dry brush it. I've got a couple of greens. I'm going to dry brush it the gunship green first. This should just pick out all the little raised bits and just start adding a little bit of definition back into it. So I'm going to pick out some of this onto here. And this is showing, I mean, these air paints, you can dry brush with them. It's paint at the end of the day. So what we do is some of that. And most of that comes off there quite nicely. And then it's just a circular motion on here, just very lightly. A little bit of water on it as well, doesn't need much. That. Circular and just drag it over. What you're trying to do is highlight all the raised bits. The purpose of this coat really is to try and remove any of the blotchiness on smooth areas, like that edge. It was a bit blotchy before, and now it's a smoother colour. I'm going to show this end here. You can see the blotchiness on it. So what I'm going to do is come over with this, like that, and that's got rid of the blotchiness. It's not really changed the colour much. It has a little bit, but not much. We're going to change the colour in a bit when we use a different paint. But stages. Always do dry brushing in stages. It's the old mantra. It's very, very easy to put paint on. Getting it off is quite hard. You can effectively remove paint. What you're really going to be doing, though, is painting back over it in a different colour. So I need a little bit more of this. And I will get the rest of these done again, because I'm doing the whole train in one go with a paintbrush in my mouth. And then we shall return and we'll be back. So if I have a look at this one, this one's got a bit more of a texture to it. So this one here, this should do it quite nicely. And it is. I'm just very lightly rubbing it over, but it's changed the green. It's desaturated it slightly, because this green isn't quite as saturated as the base colour, so the wash coat I used. But it works, and we are going to be stepping through a couple of other greens as well in a little bit. This, like I say, is more about just sorting the innards out. And you see it's picked out the strapping on that. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so it's brought some of the panel detailing back in. It's highlighted it a bit. What I now need is another colour. Now this wire flesh is it's too similar. So I'm going to go with this one, Warboss Green. Now I'm going to have to be a little bit careful with this, because this is quite a jump in colour. Normally you want to go up a couple of shades at a time. I could mix this. I'm not going to. Ooh, that is quite a bright green. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of that on here with the water, and I'm going to really take nearly all of this paint off. So we're down like that. And I'm going to start this, and I'm going to do the same thing again, just very gentle circular motion. And what this is going to do is pick out all of the raised bits, and I'm going to do a little bit more just in the middle of these panels, just slightly. And hopefully you can see that it's made quite a difference. It's not, again, it's not a massive, the colour's quite a bit lighter, but because I'm only putting a very, very small amount of paint on, it's not doing a lot. So grab hold of that, a little bit of water on there. It's the other thing with this damping pad, you don't always have to go back and put a load more paint on your brush. You can just apply a little bit of that. And you can probably see in the light where it's going on, because it's a little bit shinier until it dries. And this is going to give it a slightly dustier look. Normally I'll be weathering wagons like this as well. Here I'm not going to, because I figure so the whole Christmas theme, there's no one need to worry too much about health and safety, so we have got a plentiful size workforce. I can put this down the sides as well. It's going against whatever the detail is on the model. So here I've got vertical planking, so I'm coming down from the sides as well as going round. And that, bring another wagon in. If I just tilt them a little bit, it's made quite a difference. So again, I'm going to carry on with this because I've got all of them to do. And we'll see how we look at the end. So let's just come onto here like this. This one's more vertical planking. I might have got a little bit too much paint on there for that one. But yeah, it's probably a little bit too much on there. It'll cope. There's going to be more colours going on in a minute anyway. So, and this is an open wagon, so you can get away with them being a little bit scruffy, so to speak. There's the obviously the Thomas character there of Scruffy the Truck. So yeah, that'll do. Anyway, I'll be back in a mo. Right, so that's that. Finishing touch is going to be this one. Getting the light to catch that. Skarsnik Green. Which is, if memory serves, Skarsnik is a goblin. This is another really quite light green. A bit of that on there just to thin it out slightly. And this you want to do very, very lightly. The purpose here is just to catch some of the raised edges, just slightly, maybe a little bit in the middles. But as you can see, that's brought all the detail out quite nicely. So here like so. It's really just edges, edge highlighting, effectively done with a dry brush. This so goes on very lightly. There's not much paint on here at all, but it's brought that up. So we do another one there. This guards van actually would probably be a good one for this, because it should lighten up the centre of the panels slightly, because this is an old trying one, but it's got very smooth surfaces to it. So if I just do this, it's lightening the panels up a little, catching the edges and lightening the panels just slightly. A bit more of that. Again, this is one where if you put too much on, it'll look a little bit weird because it's quite bright. But again, just round and round and round. There's a handrail along the middle here, which I'm going to pick out later. Not forget that bit on the inside. And also, not forgetting, wherever it is, it's around here somewhere, I've got the bit of the roof. Where have I put that? Here we are. It's over here. So this just needs doing as well. Just because otherwise when I stick this back on, it's going to look a little bit weird. So that's that. So again, I'm going to get these done. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, now that's actually the base colours done. There is one more stage I need to do, which I'm going to do in a bit, which is to paint the roofs, and I've got some panel liner to do with that. Most of these are now finished, as far as I'm concerned for this. There's some detailing to go on as well, but I'll do that later. What I've got left now are the two open wagons and this, and these need their insides painting, which is going to be a wood colour just for the floor on the guards van, and the colour I'm using for this is Games Workshop's Mornfang Brown. I don't know what a Mornfang is, but I do know it's brown, so yeah. A little bit of water, don't need much, just to thin this slightly from the pot. And then I'm just going to go into here and paint the floor. Now, yes, this does also need shading and highlighting. However, this is much easier to do because this is going to get a wash, which I'm going to wash into the corners. And that's going to be it. I'm not going to be doing anything else with that. I don't need to. The open wagons, they're going to be painted brown. They're also going to be given a load eventually, so you won't see it except for the high bits on the sides. So that will do. And this is just a generic brown. I mean, there's a lot of browns I could have picked for this one. I picked this one because I could find it. And the other brown I found is a bit too dark. It's actually remarkably close to the brown the model was in originally, which is quite nice. So again, a little bit of water on the brush helps. What you're doing is you're helping the paint flow. You don't want too much because it'll go everywhere, but just a little bit. It helps the paint flow, and it also helps you get rid of brush strokes. Now, the inside floor of a guard's van, you're not really going to notice brush strokes anyway. Not least because of the panelling artifacts and ejection marks and stuff from the tooling. But there we go. This capstan here for the brake lever, I'm not sure what colour that should be. I'm guessing the top of the brake lever would probably be red, but I'm not entirely sure. It's one of the problems with stuff from like the 1930s. Most of the photographs are black and white, and the colour descriptions tend not to be amazing. I mean, I've seen this with some military modelling, where colours, should we say, there's artistic license involved, which is fine. I mean, at the end of the day, you're after an effect. It's like, oh, I want this to look like sort of treated wood. I think it looks a little bit like treated wood, so it'll do. Right, but that's the floor of that painted. I've now got the inside of these two to do as well. This is obviously a little bit easier because it's not right next to another colour. So we can just paint the insides of these. However, one of these had a load in it originally that was a bit yuck. Not to put too fine a point on it. Not quite sure what it was, but it appeared to be glued quite heavily. Just going to take the paint off the top there where it goes on. Some of the glue came out when I put it in isopropyl alcohol, some of it didn't. So, yeah, it is what it is. But this is what we're going to do. It's just a little bit of paint down in here. And then obviously you can do whatever. Now, as I've said, I'm not planning on actually actively weathering these vehicles. I just want quite a bright, cheerful finish for them, I think. Of course, there I can always run a brush load of green around the top edge later. I am going to be putting some more markings on them. I'm going to use a technique I've not used before, which is the AK Interactive paint markers, which some of you may be familiar with. I've been aware of them for a while, but I haven't actually used them because I normally use a brush. They're apparently rather good for painting rust on track, because it's basically a felt tip pen that leaves acrylic paint behind. So it's like, okay, I'll have a look at that. So I've got myself a black one and a white one, so I'm going to try that. Thinking white for lettering and black for shadowing lettering. And what I'm hoping is it's a hell of a lot easier than trying to freehand with a brush. So we shall see. Like I say, the floor of this is going to be covered with a load, but for now it's getting some brown paint because it'll look better. Doesn't need loads. It's nice detail actually on the inside of these. These are quite old wagons, but some nice planking detail. I know some of the earlier Hornby type ones of these, the inside is just smooth plastic, which looks a bit rubbish until you put a load in it, and you sort of... I always treated that as encouragement to give them loads when I was younger. Usually consisting of ballast, because ballast I had, so I used ballast. Or in one case talcum powder, which, suffice it to say, that didn't go well. That was a mistake. There you go, brown interior. So I shall let that dry. I'll do this last one, and then we're going to have a little look at the roofs, because the roofs of these are going to be... It's a different paint. It's a different technique I'm going to be showing on those. It's a technique I would have used on the rest of them, like I said, if I'd been able to get a black version of the pale grey paint I'm going to be using. You can make your own. This is a panel wash, so like a bit of an oil wash. Because the paint I'm going to be using is an enamel, which I don't normally use. I mean, I've used enamels in the past. I know some people seem to swear by them because they've grown up on them. Well, I sort of did, and then about 35 years ago I was introduced to acrylic paints, and frankly I've never gone back. Enamels have their uses. Well, they're very, very good for weathering. Oil washes especially. But we shall come to that in a mo. So let's get the inside of this done. And the beauty of this is these wagons don't need the next stage, so I don't have to wait for this to dry. Just paint this in here, and this is going on quite nicely over the green base coat and whatever it was. I mean, I primed these, and when I was painting the green on the outside I wasn't that bothered about what went on the inside. Right, so that's those. The only thing left that needs paint on the inside now is the coach. I need to do an interior for that, which is not happening in this video. But we shall see. Now those, as I say, there's a couple of wagons. Got a brake shoe from something on its own, so it's more, less a brake shoe, more of a broken shoe. Now this bit's sped up somewhat as I'm putting this light grey AK panel liner on the roof. In the grand scheme of things, I almost wish I hadn't bothered, because to be honest you can't actually see I did it. So I need to have another think about this. Hence why I'm sort of fast forwarding this section, because what I'm saying and the wittering on really doesn't matter. What this actually needs is the roofs, a sort of a more greyish wash going around the edges, and then dry brushing with the white. In fact, probably actually painting in a very pale grey and then dry brushing white would have made more sense. However, we are where we are. So, without much further ado, let's get back to the wittering. Okie dokie, back again. Now, these are largely done. What I need to do now is a little bit of detailing on them. So for the detailing, what we're going to be using is Black Legion. This is Games Workshop contrast paint. I'm using this because it's a largely opaque black. It's not got too much of the contrast effect in it, but it goes on really easily. Retributor Armour, which is a gold, which I'm going to use for certain bits of like door handles. I've got dark aluminium and chrome. Get these into focus as the metallic colours. These are things like buffers and such like. And Proacryl's Bold Titanium White. If you want a white acrylic paint, this is the one to get. This is about as good as it gets. So the first thing I'm going to do is some black. And for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the A wheel trying to escape. I'm going to paint the disc wheels for the coach. All the rest of the wheels are spoked, I think. Yeah, so they can all stay in black, so they're fine. And here I'm just going to do the infill bit in the disc. Could do these in other colours. Could do them in red, for example, on these ones. I'm not. I'm going to use black. Get these other brushes out of the way. So what we do is we get the brush flexing a little bit. And all I'm doing is this bit in the middle. And this is really just to kill the shine on it, so that when I put the white over the rim in a bit, it'll look decent. Now these contrasty colours, they're interesting paints. The idea behind them is they're self-highlighting. As I say, some are more than others. There's another black called Black Templar, which is, I think it's named after some of the Games Workshop Space Marines, but it's a slightly bluer black, and it's slightly more translucent. So you put that on, the idea is you paint it on over like a white or a pale grey or something like that, or a bony colour, and lo and behold, see, there's a wheel with the inserts in black. Once that dries, lo and behold, it highlights itself. So you then don't have to go over with a whole load of other stuff. The concept is slightly better executed, I feel, by the likes of Army Painter with their speed paint range. Vallejo have express paints. A fair few companies jumped on the bandwagon and sort of learnt from a little bit of what Games Workshop had done. Some of their paints are a little bit better than the GW ones, shall we say. But this Black Templar is a very, very good black. It's about the only black Games Workshop do that does what you want it to. Very, very easy to paint on. It flows nicely. And it's opaque. Their other black, just like their normal paint range black, is quite frankly horrible. Don't try and use that. It's a horrible paint. It's very thick. It's very sticky. It doesn't flow well, and if you water it down, it doesn't cover very well either. So it's a colour that reputedly some of the Games Workshop's own painters don't like using, because they used to use other companies' colours a few years back. Apparently less so now. Now they've got better ranges themselves. But they were notorious for you'd look in one of their books and there'll be a paint colour they've allegedly used, and you make it by mixing about 6 of the Games Workshop colours in a really weird ratio. And you look at it and you realise, yeah, but Tamiya make a colour that is exactly the same as that in a single paint. Now I wonder which they actually used. So yeah, anyway, never mind. So this goes on. I'm not too worried about getting this on massively smoothly, because let's face it, it's a wheel going under the train. The idea here is, as I said, kill the shine and give it a little bit more contrast when I do the rims in white, which I'll do after I've fitted to the coach, because it's a lot easier to paint a wheel rim when you can rotate the wheel in its bearings. Much, much easier. So we'll do that in a minute. There's a little bit more going to be in this black as well. It's not just this. So that's the wheels. You may notice a little bit went onto the rims there. I'm not that bothered. Now, I did think, should I paint things like the brake shoes and the couplings? I'm actually going to leave them. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference. What I am going to do, though, is paint the brake wheel in here with this black as well. I painted the floor yesterday, and I've also gone round into the corners, and I've run a brown wash, which you might be able to see. I don't know how easy it is to see that. Just adjust the light slightly, you might be able to see it a bit better. It's just slightly darker in the corners. It's not much. It's a very subtle effect, which I quite like, because that's what I want. So I'm going to paint this in black, and then I'm going to paint the handle at the top in red. but I'm going to do the stem in black. Yes, gets a little bit more contrast in here, a little bit more colour. And it removes a little bit of the look of, oh, this has been sprayed green and then had a bit of red painted to it. Just adds a few more colours. So that'll do for that. And then the other bit I've got, some of these wagons here have some pipes on the end. Only little ones. But I'm also going to paint those in black. Just a little bit. I'm just going to bring my magnifier in so I can see this, so the light will probably change briefly. Let's sort that out. Yeah, it's a little bit bright there, but I want the magnifier so I can see what I'm doing. Yes, let's have a little look. And yeah, it's just a little detail on the end. It's not massively needed, but it'll do both ends. And then I've got the coach has got similar that needs doing. I'll say this is where you want a paint that flows nicely. You don't want too much. If you water this down, it'll go everywhere. So that's that. I've got the other one of those to do as well, which I just need to find a way of picking up without putting a paintbrush into a monitor. Should be, yeah, anyway. And I'm going to do all of the buffer heads in black as well in a sec. But I want to get these detail bits done first. It's only, let's say, it is just a couple of little bits. Assuming this is supposed to be some sort of brake pipe. See, it's not gone on perfect, but it'll do. So that's those. Now the coach. Let's have a little look. I put the bogies back on, so they look a bit better. What I've now got to do is paint this brake rigging on the end. I'll be back in a sec because you're not going to be able to see this because I'm going to have to hold it out of camera angle because the coach doesn't fit on the desk otherwise. So back in a mo. Okay, so that's the end of that. And if I bring the coach around, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I've done. And try and get this so it's in the light. Yeah, a little bit awkward to see. I've painted some of the brake rigging and stuff on the ends. So next up is a quick one. I'm going to go around and do all the buffer heads, including the backs. What I'm then going to do is paint the shafts in a silvery colour, because I think that'll look quite good. So I'm just going to come onto here, and it's literally just like that, and then run the brush around the back. Where the silver's going, I also want to get a bit of the black on it, because the silver works better over black than it does over red, as the red can sometimes bleed through. Isn't what you want. So that goes on. So as you can see, buffer heads in black. It's just a little detail. I'm going to get the rest of that done. We're back in a mo and we'll see how we go. So, gone in. Buffers are now in black. That looks good. I'm going to do some white detailing next. Now, for this, I need my little not quite palette again, because I need to get some paint out of this. I can get the decrepit paint off the lid. Right. And what we can do here is some handrails, but also the tips of the brake levers. If I can get the paint to come out of the pot, that is. Come on, you know you want to. There we go. Some of that. It's a bit thick. As you can sort of see, it's ejected a lump off the top, which I shall take and put on here. Yeah. Again, I'm going to thin this a little because it needs to flow a bit better. Yeah, I'll bring my magnifier back down again so I can see what I'm doing. And then here, it is just little bits like this here. Just that. That's it. The same on the other side. It's a simple effect, but it does That's that. Stands out. I quite like that as an effect. So, yeah, let's have another one. Got the little... Yeah, one of these little wagons here. I've got more to do on the coach. So, we'll look at that in a sec. And on the brake van, actually. So they've got handrails that need painting. So I'm just going to do these here. Drop it down so you can see what I'm doing. See if that helps. And it's just, yeah, it really is just a little bit of a detail. It's not important. But if you look at ready-to-run wagons, it's the sort of thing the better quality ones have. It's just a little bit of paint on the end of the brake handles. As you can see, it's not hard to do. I mean, this is... If you've got wagons and you're wanting to improve how they look, this is one of the simpler ways of doing it. It's just put a little dab of white here and there. See, this one's handle's a little bit shorter, so paint it there. And there's all the builder plates and other bits and pieces on here, but I'm not doing that. These also have handbrakes on them. So in a lot of more modern stock, the handbrake is actually a wheel. You activates a little screw thread that puts the brakes on, but on these older ones, it's a lever. Which, as I say, it's a handbrake, parking brake, used in a few other little places. Something else to note on these. I've painted these bits here in black. This is the clip that comes through. Yeah, so it's just needed a little bit of paint. Let's move a wire out of the way. Right, now, the brake van. Now this has got quite a bit of hand railing on it, so what I'm going to do is pick that out in white as well. Now this is... I'm just going to move my light because I need to be able to see what I'm doing when I'm doing this. But here, if I turn the light down a bit, you might be able to... Yeah, might be able to see it a little bit better. And if I just try and refocus this camera slightly. Yeah, might be a bit better. Right. So this is literally coming in and just, as I did when I did the edge of the footstep, I'm just using the side of the brush and running it along the slightly raised area here. Just carefully. And the fact the raised area is here makes this a lot easier to do. Got a cat destroying a carpet somewhere in the background. Don't know if you can hear that, but there we go. As it referred to as a flipping kitten. Don't know which one of that'll be. I've got my suspicions. A bit more water. Because this here, you need the paint to flow. Just along there like that. But you can see that stands out, and that's a really nice look. So I'm going to do this on all the rest of the handrails. You may notice there I've gone a little bit over with the white. I will correct that in a minute. Relatively straightforward. You wait until the white's dried, and then you paint over it. So that's how we'll deal with that. The thing you might notice is I'm not using a very small brush for this. This is a number 3, I think it is, yeah, number 3. There seems to be an obsession that you must use the smallest brush you've got for things like this. Well, actually what you want to use is the largest brush you can get away with. Because larger brushes hold a bit more paint, they can make the paint flow nicer, and it's just easier to use. As you see here, this isn't difficult. I'm not I'm not trying to paint a straight line on the model. I'm following a raised detail. I'll try and angle this a bit, see what I'm doing a bit better. A little bit more. I didn't quite want it, but I can deal with that. And this end's got a little bit more railing to it as well. And you can pick the railings out in white, pretty much with any colour scheme. White or silver tends to look quite good. But and there you've got handrails down the side. So I'm just going to clean the brush and I'll do the other side. And incidentally, if you like this sort of painting video, comment appreciated if you sort of want to see more stuff like this. If this sort of thing becomes more common, I'll probably get some better lights, because let's face it, the light I'm using at the moment is a bit bright and the camera isn't brilliant for this either. Right, there we are, that's that watered down. I'm just going to clean the brush off again, because otherwise it's too wet. Here's the other thing, you can always add water with a brush and then clean the brush again. So let's come in here. It doesn't have hand railing around the back, so that helps. And again on the door. Nice and simple. But it stands out. It's moderately steady hand helps. It's not massively important for this. Like I say, I'm painting a raised area on the model, so all I'm really trying to do is just catch that raised edge. That runs down there. That little handrail, little knobbly bit on the end, whatever they are. I'm sure there's a technical term for that. I'm sure it's not actually supposed to be called the knobbly bit, but anyway, there we are, the knobbly bit. Let's do this end here. And I'm going to paint, yeah, I was going to do the brake handle in white with part of it in red, I think, so I'm going to do that in a sec as well. Do that while I'm here and while I remember, in fact. So here I have the brake handle. I'm just going to add this white to it. And this will make putting the red on in a minute quite a bit easier. It'll also make it stand out nicely, so we'll do that. Come down this side. Now I was hoping to be able to get some passengers into these and like some sort of guard figure. I haven't got any, so that's going to have to wait a little, possibly for next year, because obviously this rake of trains is not just for 2025. I am going to be continuing with this. I have got some plans for a loco for it. I've got one of the old Hornby B12s, and I've got a decoder coming. And the original idea was I was going to use that, but I'm not going to have time to repaint it this year. So when we go down and we run this shortly, and I am going to be running these in these videos, we are going to see what locomotives I can find to run with it. So I don't want them fighting over it, of course, because that's not in the spirit of Christmas, is it? The spirit of Christmas is the annoying small child who can completely destroy everybody else at Monopoly. So anyway, right. So there we have brake van with some white detailing. Now I've got a little bit more to do with the coach. It's got a little bit of handrail detail on it here and there, which I'm going to do in exactly the same way. It's slightly awkward to show on camera just because of the size of the thing. There is one bit I can do, however, which is there is a handrail here at the back. So I'm going to do that first. That just goes along there like that. Could do with just a little bit more paint. There we go. That's got a white handrail. There are some on the ends. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show those on camera because, as before, I've got to have the thing pretty much on its end in order so I can see what I'm doing with that, and that means it won't fit on camera. But there we go, another handrail. Again, slightly off on the underside. I'll be back in a minute, and we'll come and have a look at doing some door handles. Yeah, so here we go. You can see a bit of white on the end, looks quite nice. Next up is the door furniture, which is all of the door handles, which is going to be in Retributor Armour, which is, I think it's another one of Games Workshop's things. But I'm just going to come in, and again, these are all raised details, so this is going to be done in exactly the same way. I'm just going to come in here and pick them out. And there's hinges and stuff as well. I'm not painting the hinges in this. So actually see the word guard on here as well. This is there's an old Triang one. I thought the bits like guard and whatever were transfers, and I thought they'd come off when I did the IPA wash. However, they didn't. It turns out the reason they don't is they're actually embossed onto the side of the vehicle and then picked out. So in theory, I could paint them. I'm not going to. My painting skills are not up to picking out lettering in any way, shape or form. If I wanted lettering like that on the side of these, that would be find some transfers. Which I might do. I'm not doing it right now, but I might do at some point. So this is a very... It's a very small, very simple effect, but it just adds a little bit to the sides. So I'll do them on the other side as well. Then it's going to be refit the wheels and add some lining to them. I'll bring this over here again and just pick out. It's just the handle and the little grab rail next to it. That's all I'm doing. That. And if anyone's wondering why I don't use the camera I use in the cellar up here, I did try. I can't get it so that it'll see what I'm doing without it being horrendously in the way. And trying to use the desk I solder at for painting has turned out not to work brilliantly either for some reason. It's just doesn't seem to work right with the light. There we go. So that's, let me just clean the brush and we'll have a look. So I'm using a small inspection camera to film this. Unfortunately, it's fixed focus, so I've tried to aim it at the desk, but it's a bit, yeah, anyway. But there we have all that. You can sort of see the detailing on the side. Right, so as I say, next job is wheels. So I'm going to put all the wheels back in. I'll be back in a sec and we'll have a look at putting some lining on them. Okay, wheels back in. So, how to paint the lining? Well, this is comparatively straightforward. Basically, touch brush to wheel, rotate wheel. And it should go on fairly well. And once again, this is the Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White, slightly thinned with a bit of water. Now, obviously, in theory, this should all be weathered to the point you can hardly see the white on the wheels. However, because of the nature of this project, I'm not weathering it, as I've said, so we're going to be able to see the whites quite nicely. I'm going to do the coach, I'm going to do all the wagons as well. They haven't got the wheels back in yet, but I'm going to do those off camera, but as you can see, it's a very simple effect, and it's much easier to do when they're fitted to the trains, because obviously the bearings will hold the wheel for you steady, and you can just rotate it with your thumb. But there we go, a couple of lined wheels. So I'm going to do the rest, and then we shall go downstairs and we'll see how this lot runs. Okay, here we are back at the layout. Things powered up. Honours has gone for the first hauling of this to Q6 number 2265. Chosen by simple virtue of she was on the road that the wagons and that are on. So yeah, chosen by laziness. Anyway, scanning backwards, we have first off the coach. Looking quite nice with the lined wheels and little handrails picked out. Door handles don't really show up too much, but they're nice. Overall, pretty good. Now, something I did discover earlier today, which I didn't realise I had. I've got an interior. It's from another one of them. So I need to get that cleaned up and painted and get that fitted. Didn't realise. And this is an example of what this coach looked like before it got painted, with its rather murky, glossy brown, which you can sort of see all the texture on the surface. Yeah, not quite sure what was done with that. I'm going to guess that's Humbrol enamel, but anyway, it came off. Continuing backwards, we have the first of the open wagons. These are going to get a payload. I haven't done it yet, but they're going to get one. The two former Kellogg's vans. All of this needs markings and other bits and pieces adding. Another open wagon. Two more covered vans. And at the back, the brake van. So, with that done, without further ado, we shall scan back to the front. I'm going to go over to the control panel and I'm going to set her running and we'll see how she looks. So, here we go. Now, the thing is, the layout now has the upper deck on, so we're now going to come out from under that. And attempt to follow her around. Entering the scenic area, coming up the incline. Watch the train a bit. I'm really quite pleased with how these have turned out. I'm also quite pleased with the fact they're actually running properly. Okay, Christmas train. This is the first part of this. There's more detailing still to come. There's going to be some lights, there's going to be some other bits and pieces. But it runs, and it's got some paint on it. And it didn't take too long. And I can't see it on half of the layout anymore because I've got the upper deck of the station in place still. As you can see, it's now currently rumbling around under all of this lot. This is the use of having the sensors. Anyway, this has been quite a bit of fun to do. I'm hoping you've enjoyed watching it. Maybe picked up a tip or two about painting, or about not painting, or about if you want to paint something, go and watch a channel of someone who knows how to do it. Yeah, I've enjoyed this. I'm going to enjoy the rest of it as well. I've got some interiors to do for the coach, which is over here. I'm actually going to probably 3D print some because I need to do other bits and pieces. That'll be quicker than stripping that. I've got to do some loads for the open wagons. I've got some print files for some little presents, so I need to do like a little insert that can sit in there with a bunch of presents on it, and possibly something a little bit sparkly. But anyway, that's it for this video. So likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, more than welcome. Anybody else got a specific Christmas train? Something you've done yourself? Something you've bought? Kelly, I know you've got a Christmas train. I've seen the video. I quite like that. I think that little grey loco you've got works brilliantly for it. Thank you very much for the idea. Like I say, I really have actually quite enjoyed doing this, and I'm going to enjoy finishing it off. I'm not going to have a loco for it this year. I'm not going to have time. It sounds like it's derailed, but it hasn't. Anyway, never mind. I will catch you on the next one. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.